Today we're going to talk about conflict in the workplace. We will discuss the essence of conflict, how to handle conversation, and how to reach solutions. We will also be using some supplemental videos from YouTube to help better our understanding of conflict. Throughout the training module, we will ask questions. Please answer the questions as we go along with the handout provided. First, let's talk about conflict. Conflict is inevitable. Conflict is defined as a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. At the core of conflicts are feelings such as disrespect, hurt, or belittlement. Conflict can occur between anyone in the workplace and can involve more than two people. It is important to recognize when conflict is arising and to settle it. Some sources of conflict include poor communication, personality clashes, and different values. All of these things are seen in the workplace. Let's review. Question 1. Conflict is A. A joke between two people, B. A serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one, C. A quick conversation, or D. An exchanging of disagreeing ideas. Question 2. Sources of conflict include A. Poor communication, B. Personality clashes, C. Different values, or D. All of the above. The next video is going to tell us a little more about conflict.
What is it about conflict that makes it so difficult to deal with, and how come good people can turn into such monsters in the face of conflict? The most common way of dealing with conflict is to avoid it. Some people walk away, others get really upset, wind themselves up and attack, and others just get sick or go on stress leave. In fact, it's amazing what people will do in order to avoid conflict and the emotional stress that comes with it. There is a very clever saying that goes like this: denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is, however, one of the most common problems when it comes to resolving conflict. When confronted with a tense or difficult conflict, too many people smooth it over, bury their head in the sand, and the conflict goes on for another 1, 2, or 3 weeks, months, or even years in some cases. I want to introduce you to a definition of conflict and then give you a pathway for the resolution of conflict. Before I do, I want to say this. For some people, even the word conflict means warfare, dead bodies and blood on the streets, and it's very common for women and men to see anything less than that as not being in conflict at all. So this is a definition that starts at a very low level, because most conflict starts out as very small upsets and builds and grows into a full-scale battle. So here's the definition. Conflict exists when one person has a need of another and that need is not being met. Now, don't be fooled by the simplicity of this definition. The resolution of conflict starts from here, and the first step is to express the need. The second step is to find out if the need can or cannot be met. If the need can be met, then we have resolution. If it's a no, then we negotiate to resolve the conflict, or we go into the management of conflict. So here's the problem. Most people go straight from having an unmet need into the management of conflict, bypassing step 1 and step 2 because they are afraid and don't talk to the people who can do something about it. And that's not pretty. In fact, it gets quite ugly. So here's what the management of conflict looks like: sulking, withdrawing, getting sick, the silent treatment, backstabbing, gossiping, shouting, blocking, being aggressive, and getting angry. So the resolution of conflict starts with expressing your unmet need and then finding out if your unmet need can or cannot be met. If your conflict has escalated to the stage where it's too tough or sensitive or difficult to handle, then you really need to think seriously about involving a neutral third party to help you mediate the dispute, and we can help you out with that. For more information, please call me.
When a conflict arises in the workplace, it is important to address it as soon as possible. You want the work environment to be positive, therefore conflict needs to be eliminated. The best way to handle conflict is by sitting down with a neutral person. This person is often referred to as a mediator. A mediator is a person who attempts to make people involved in a conflict come to an agreement. In the workplace, we suggest having a manager or HR director involved as the mediator. It is important that when having the conversation, you remove all distractions. That means no phones, TVs, or music. It's also important to set ground rules. Examples of ground rules include: the mediator will control the conversation. Each person has a chance to explain their side of the story until the other party fully understands their perspective. Seek first to understand the other person. Give each other the benefit of the doubt. Be respectful and honest. No name-calling. No interrupting. No raising voices. Getting frustrated or angry is okay, but taking that frustration out on the mediator or other party is not, and maintain privacy after the meeting. Once the ground rules are set and everyone agrees, you are ready to resolve the conflict. Before we go on to resolving the conflict, let's answer a couple more questions. Question 3. When do you want to address conflict? A, a couple of days after. B, a week after. C, as soon as possible. Or D, never, just let it go away on its own. Question 4. What is a mediator? A, a person who attempts to make people involved in a conflict come to an agreement. B, a person who attempts to make people happier. C, a person who punishes people for conflict. Or D, a person who breaks up a physical fight. After the ground rules are set and everyone agrees, the mediation can begin. During the mediation, address the problem directly. Allow each person the chance to share their concerns and perspective. Find common ground. This is something that all parties involved can agree on. Confront negative feelings, and be sure that all feelings are resolved. Now let's talk about finding solutions. It's best to go through each issue one by one. Find compromises for each individual issue. The parties involved in the conflict should be making the resolutions together. The mediator should not be finding solutions for them. Ways to find solutions include collaboration, compromise, and accommodation. Collaboration involves both parties working together to produce or create an outcome. Compromise is an agreement or a settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions. Accommodation is a convenient arrangement. Here's another question. Question 5. What is compromise? A, an agreement or settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions. B, one person gets what they want and the other does not. C, the mediator makes the solution. Or D, no one gets what they want. Here are some tips and warnings to keep in mind. The conflict may not be resolved, but know that by taking steps to resolve the issue, you did all that you could. Remain optimistic and positive. Taking the first step of resolving the conflict will be the hardest part, but in doing so, you will be taking the first step towards a better work environment. Be prepared to listen to the other person's views as well as asking them to respect you and your view. Remain open-minded and try to see it from their perspective. Repeat the concerns that are brought to you to ensure that you are understanding correctly. So how do you know that it worked? Conversations and interactions between the two people are free of tension. You are able to work closely on projects and tasks. You use inclusive language such as we and us. You respect the other person by reducing your gossip. You're aware of tones and body language and make them relaxed. And you're proactive when new conflicts arise. Now that we've discussed everything, let's see conflict in action. Our next video is going to show you a scenario of conflict in the workplace. You will see the scenario handled in 2 different ways.
You know, every time you're late, I have to pick up your slack.
I'm sorry, I've got a lot going on right now. Anyway, it was 10 minutes. Is it really that big of a deal?
It was 20 minutes, and yes, it is a big deal. How about I start leaving 20 minutes early, and you can see what it's like to have 20 minutes worth of extra work to do.
I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me?
How about a real apology for one thing, and maybe then you can start coming in on time.
How about you stop making such a big deal out of one little mistake?
Wow, you are so not gonna last here. Thank you. You know, every time you're late, I have to pick up your slack.
My mornings have been really tough with the kids lately. I'm sorry that's affected you.
Well, you're gonna have to get that figured out, because that was just 20 minutes of covering both phones.
I really am sorry. I've been there before and I know what a drag it is.
Yeah, it's really stressful.
I promise I'll be on time from now on.
I'd appreciate that.
After the video, let's answer some questions. Question 6. The last scenario was the correct way to address conflict. A, true, or B, false. Let's answer the final question. Question 7. What should you do if confronting the person doesn't work? A, ignore the conflict. B, get over it. C, call your mom. Or D, talk with the manager or HR director. Feel free to check your answers. And remember, if you ever have any questions, your manager or human resources director is there to help.